Have you ever had a camera in front of you? Have you done any work in
Yeah,
front of a
just with
camera before?
work and just like filming content and things like that. So
Do you find that you have to now film content heaps as a PT as part of, the change in the way you have to market for business?
it's definitely becoming a lot more personable. Um, and I feel like the landscape's definitely shifting within trying to reach people where they kind of really want to see who you are for who you are, and not because like you Google back squat technique and there's so much crap out there. Like for our systems and processes with how we run things, like we've got like an internal app for all our exercise prescriptions. Um, so that can be handy for just like generic demos. But aside from that, if you actually want to really be able to reach people, you got to have a bit more of a conversation around things. I feel.
How do you find producing content now? Because I know for me, I'm starting this journey of the podcast and producing content, and I'm like, I'm not funny enough, or it's not entertaining, or like I need to create a hook so that people want to listen. Are you creating content for your existing platform of clients, or are you doing it to try to attract new clients?
I'm just trying to look at it through. Like with the hook, I gotta have a yo-yo to start with. That's lured people in. It's just more so trying to come up with answers to questions that we hear all the time in the gym. So I'm struggling with X or I want Y. Great. Well, every time we get a question from someone, that's going to be helpful for someone else. So it's also satisfying the need of our clients that come in and see us, but also potentially reaching more people.
Yeah, yeah. I want to say thanks for coming onto the potty, firstly, because it's it's all happened very quickly, and you've
Yeah.
been awesome in sharing with me some of the insight that you've had within your business, within your relationships, within your life outside of those two things as well. And so I start off the podcast by asking every guest that comes on in an email or in a questionnaire if 99% of the population is wiped out and you, Dylan, was left with 1% of the population, that were going to listen to whatever you said, and you had the responsibility to pass on whatever knowledge you felt fit to help them grow, learn, or become better, what would it be? And one of the things you said was around relationships, and I really would love to dive deep into that with you first, because you've been with your partner now for what, 10 years?
10 years, yeah, 10 years.
10 years. And, prior to that, I know you're pretty social and outgoing and, fucking tall, good looking bloke. So I'm sure you didn't have any issues going out and about. And I want to know why relationships out of everything is important to you to talk about.
I've always come across quite confident and somewhat charismatic and easygoing, but the most work I've had to do for myself has been around communication, specifically with relationships, and that dives into relationships with my wife, with my now wife, and staff and things like that. So it definitely hasn't been an easy transition, and it's taken a lot of work to really look at like what I value in and like a lot of self-discovery, because when I moved to Melbourne when I was 19. I was going out pretty much every weekend. I would live this certain life on the weekend where I'd go out and party, but then during the week, being a PT, I was eating my chicken breast and broccoli and crushing training, but then that was Monday to Friday. But then I was a completely different person on the week.
And so obviously there's relationships with yourself and relationships with others.
Mm.
And sometimes they sort of coincide, as you go through your journey. What was the first thing that you started to work on? Was it a relationship with yourself or relationship with others?
It was really, I just had to. So one of the reasons I moved to Melbourne was because if I stayed in WA, so I grew up in Albany, which is the most southern tip of WA, population of 30,000 people. And, I've still got some really close friends from where I grew up. But a lot of the people I grew up with were, we were just doing the same things on the weekends. And if I, from there, moved to Perth, I would just be caught in that kind of same web. So then a brother of mine moved to Melbourne, and 3 months later, I sold 2 cars. I had a old Commodore wagon and a 75 VK Valiant that was kind of handed down to me from my brother. So moved over here 3 months later with $6,000 in my bank account. And initially it was all around just awareness, because I always thought I was in a relationship with people, and I was like, oh great, after a certain period, like I'll tell them that I love them or I really care for them. But it was just really superficial, because I personally, I just didn't really kind of know what that was. I've never being at that deeper level of really kind of caring or being capable of loving someone.
It was interesting that you said, you felt like there was a timeline, and then, it's probably right to say, I love you.
Yeah.
And I guess for me, the first time I said those words, I was like 25, 26. But prior to that, I had no idea of what it was. Can you explain to me the difference between the previous relationship where you said I love you and the current relationship where you said I love you, and what was the difference in those dynamics that made you feel potentially that way?
It was the person I was with, and it was just being challenged and being like, are you actually being genuine? I don't think you are. I feel like I'm missing a hell of a lot from you if you're actually genuine in telling me that you love me. So, my wife was incredible for that, because she really kind of pushed the boundary for me to really kind of get a good understanding of like what I really want and what I'm looking for in relationships, and then what I'm really kind of capable of. Because, I would always come across and care for people and say, like, I really love you and I'll do anything for you. But it was just such like superficial bullshit. And it wasn't until I was, with someone who could really kind of push the envelope, and who had the confidence to kind of like just not put up with my freaking bullshit, essentially.
It's an attractive quality.
Yeah.
If you're a guy and, let's say you're driven, or you're working out and you've got the capacity to do whatever you want, let's say from a social perspective, right? To have someone that has the ability to call your bluff or your bullshit, and make you question yourself, is fucking attractive.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's interesting because when people don't do that, it's almost like they don't kind of get me in a little bit, like they don't see through anything. And when someone can just go, I can see through everything.
Like, Dylan, shut up. I don't believe what you're saying. Give me more.
Yeah.
Instead of like, we're having fun. We're just going to go out and keep screwing around.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Massive difference.
Yeah.
And so at that time when you met your now partner, what was the version of you like prior to that? You said you're going out on the weekends and socializing and partying and all that type of stuff. Was relationships and love even on the radar for you? Did you even care about that, or was that something that?
Yeah. I obviously thought it was. I thought it was something that I really wanted. But I was just kind of incapable of like having that deep sense, like I was talking about earlier. But yeah, we definitely got to the point where we were just at kind of a tipping point where, like, thank God she, did all the work she needed to and essentially put up with my crap, because otherwise we probably wouldn't be here, and I would just be stuck in the same rut, and I wouldn't have my business and everything else that kind of comes along with it.
So you moved to Melbourne.
Yep.
Was there a catalyst for the move?
Well, my parents, so my mum and stepdad, it was just really kind of, I was just kind of stuck in the same rut, but then also we lost our family home. So like our parents went bankrupt. So there was no kind of really other option opposed to, all right, am I going to move to Perth and be around kind of the same people all the time? Or do I try something different? And then fortunate enough that my stepbrother moved over 6 months before I did. And he said, why don't you come and move to Melbourne and study in Melbourne? You'll love it. And I'd never been here before. So just kind of packed up and came across, because, there was nothing really, to be honest, kind of waiting for me in my hometown anymore.
There's been a couple of guests that have come from country to Melbourne previously, and there's been a couple of like moments for them, or there's been like this ideation of wanting to do that for a period of time or for a while. I know you said obviously that's there was a bankruptcy that happened. There was obviously those type of things that are massive life changes for you and your own personal dynamic. But was there ever like this inkling that you've always wanted to do that or want something more?
Yeah, I did want to move to the East Coast, because a lot of the courses I was doing at the time were like, a lot of trainers were coming over from the States and just traveling on the East Coast. So I was actually going to be traveling across to Melbourne or Sydney as it was. Yeah, and like, I've always been pretty curious and love to travel and things like that. So to kind of get out of the small little, essentially like little redneck town, any opportunity, fantastic.
Yeah. It's got me thinking, like, so you've moved towns, you're out and about, you're like, I'm going to make friends, I'm going to socialize, I'm going to party, I'm going to do all
Yeah.
those things. Does that were you already doing that when you're back home? And does that sort of behavior stem from anywhere in particular? Or was it just like, nope, I'm young, I'm going to fucking do whatever I want. I'm ready to escape or ready to try different things.
Oh, it was just, I was just a product of my environment. So 3 older brothers, I grew up a lot around drinking, drugs. That was just essentially the norm all the time. So like, from a very young age, we were drinking. I remember at my parents, my mum and stepdad's wedding, I was 12 and I was wearing a penguin suit and I was absolutely freaking shit-faced. So, like it was just, that was kind of normal. So then, you go through high school, hang out with the same people, come over to Melbourne. Only people I knew here were my brother and then kind of friends I knew from back home. So I was just around the same people. So you're just kind of in like a revolving door, of like what I was doing back home.
There's a lot of boys and girls that move from country to city.
Yeah.
And maybe they haven't found a partner that can slap them into shape and wake them up a little bit. And, for you, obviously, you had someone that could say, hey, well, hold up. Like, this is unacceptable. Like, you're living 2 lives here.
Yeah.
Essentially, you're a PT that's training hard. You're living a lifestyle of health and fitness. And then on the weekends, potentially revisiting back to your younger days of, well, this is the way that I am.
Well, that's exactly it. Like, that's really all I knew.
So
it was just partying, being kind of absent, and then like really just having a good time.
So, and we all
good time my good time now is very different.
Yeah. So, for those people that are moving cities, and maybe haven't had the opportunity to meet someone or a friendship group that has enabled them to sort of take stock of themselves, what is it that you could say that would be really important for those type of people? Because there are a lot of people that we move in that have no friends that need to socialize some way. Are there other ways besides getting on the piss that they could potentially do that? That you reflect,
it's really hard, especially when you're older. Like I moved here when I was 19, so still very pliable. But it is hard moving into a new city when you're trying to make friends with people who already are in like established kind of networks and circles and things like that. Sport is a big one. I started playing hockey when I moved here and volleyball. That was really important. And then just trying to find people within kind of healthier options, like in the gym or, whatever it is. But, but with that said, like my ex-girlfriend, she had a little revolver family on the weekend who I met while I was working at a gym. But it's just trying to, whatever people you meet or things you're trying to do, if you find a bit of tension or conflict in it, it's probably a good thing to kind of lean into. Because if I just did what I was comfortable with all the time, I'd be a very different person now.
Leaning into new things is always like super important, especially when you move cities or doing things like you've done. That obviously comes from a good mindset. And one of the things that we spoke about prior to this conversation was the idea of stoicism and being able to understand that, effectively things are going to happen in your life and you're responsible for how you react to those situations. And so having a willing mindset to experience new things and being open to new things is part of that too. Where did that stoicism or that mindset start for you? Because I know you've had a little bit of adversity growing up where you're with your mates, and I'd love to know how that's filtered through to the person you are now.
It just got to the point where I just kind of got sick of blaming everything externally happening to me, or like my situations on I'm the person I am, or my bank account looks like this because of X, Y, Z. So that's when kind of diving down the route of stoicism was really powerful, and like I'm very fortunate with the industry and the people I work with. They're just very high achievers, and like we've got a bunch of CEOs, and I think it would probably be harder to find a gym with more kind of CEOs in it. But like we just got to the point where I was just kind of sick of my crap, and then I started reading the Daily Stoic. So that was just a slight kind of inkling into the kind of world of stoicism. While whatever happens to me, I cannot really kind of affect it or change it, but I can change how I react to things, and that was really helpful kind of going into COVID. So 2019, I was going to open up a gym with a physio clinic in Richmond. Then the kind of partnership fell through. Last minute, they tried to get a bit more money out of me for their brand equity, or like their EP, which kind of didn't go down too well. So that fell through. And then the gym I was looking after at the time in 2020 shut down. So I went from making relatively good money in kind of pre-COVID, and then essentially having no money whatsoever kind of March 2020, and then found out my wife was pregnant. So we got to the point where I either had to, like there's a lot of reflection on like, all right, what do I do here? Do I, just quit my job and become a fiery or something along those lines? Not that would accept me, but just something a bit more stable, because I needed to kind of provide for my family. And then from there, we just, it was like a lot of reflection on being like, all right, whatever happens with COVID, I can't control it whatsoever. So then I essentially just said, fuck it, and we opened a gym. And I remember my wife coming to me saying, Dylan, are you sure you want to open a gym at the start of COVID? And we were open for 2 weeks in January, so in June 2020. And then our official kind of opening was in November. It was like the 9th of November that year.
Yeah, right.
And then in between lockdowns, we were only open for a couple of weeks and things like that. So it was, because of having the perspective of, all right, I can't control this situation, but I can work my fucking ass off to make sure I can provide for my family was very, very helpful.
So when you started up the new gym in COVID, this is something that takes a lot of balls to do, because my housemate did something similar. He actually acquired a business during COVID, right? And there's no certainty in that moment at all. It's like, you've got a little one.
Yep.
Your partner working at the time, or just you?
Yeah. She was. Yeah,
paramedic. So she's working and she's doing shift work.
Mm.
And then you're deciding that you're going to go into this line of work in terms of, getting that business up and going. How much certainty do you need to have to take the leap of faith, or is it better just to take the leap of faith sometimes and move forward from that point of view?
Well, there was already a lot of foundation leading into it, because we were going to open up a gym with a physio clinic. So we refinanced our house, we drew equity from our house. So the kind of balls were already in motion. So it was just a matter of period of just really kind of having a really good think about, is this really what I want to do, and can I make this work? So then from there, once we talked it over, thought about it, we thought we'd give it a really good crack. And we were very fortunate where we started working out of, we were subleasing space from other PTs. So there were us and 3 other kind of businesses within the one gym. And then over time, as COVID went on, we were just able to buy out more trainers. So then we went from us to 3 to 2 to 1. And then there was just us and the guy that had the lease of the building. And then he finished up and we took over the whole building.
How did you find your relationship? We spoke about that at the beginning. How does that go when your partner's doing shift work, you're starting a new business, and you're trying to ramp that up, and you've got a little one? Because that's something that I've got a couple of mates, when I used to lifeguard, they were doing paramedics as well. Yep. And they come home and they're fucked. They're so tired. They're bent. You're trying to put all your mental energy into work, into running a business. You're stuffed. Then you got a little one. At what toll does that take on your relationship, and how do you help your relationship keep going through that type of scenario?
It was just knowing the work we were doing was temporary, because we got to a point in COVID where Alicia was like, you're actually working more now than you were pre-COVID. And I wasn't necessarily just doing work on taking Zoom and outdoor sessions. It was just getting all of our systems and processes kind of written down for the business. So because I knew if because Alicia was pregnant, I knew if we didn't get our shit together, kind of by the time we'd fully launched, we'd be screwed. So we were open for a couple of weeks in June, and then Edison, my son, was born November 2nd, and then we went back into the gym on the 9th the following. So I guess we just had solace in knowing, like, right, this is just temporary. We are getting still a lot more time together at home. But yeah, it was like we turned the situation into something pretty positive, because we were able to spend a lot more time together at home because I was at home a lot more, and so was Alicia. But yeah, it was a shitload of work.
You talk about system and processes quite a bit, and before this, we sort of spoke about, if a mate was to come up to you and ask you for advice, one of the things that you'd be pretty comfortable in speaking about was systems and processes.
Yeah.
And that's business. And there's a lot of blokes that listen to this that are either interested in going to business or are in business right now. What about systems and processes is something that's applicable to any industry that you could maybe pass on some advice about? And then what about systems and processes in the fitness industry is something that you guys do really, really well?
It's just trying to make whatever you're doing replicatable. Even if you don't have the ambitions for franchising or replicating your model, is just going into it with the perspective of being like, right, where can I essentially take this manual and duplicate it somewhere else? So that has been unbelievably helpful for us. And I just started off with, all right, what are the real pain points for me? That's communicating with clients, that's keeping, all the messages and comms in one spot. So then we looked at like, all right, what do we need to do to help kind of funnel all of our communications from clients in one spot? So then we had to find a decent CRM to do that for all of our like messages and emails and calls and things like that. So found a decent CRM, which is, I'm more than happy to talk to anyone about that as well if they need to. And then just getting everything written down. So for whatever kind of vanilla admin task I was doing kind of during COVID while we we're getting this thing built out, I was like, right, I need someone else to run the mundane. So then we looked at the point in time, we couldn't afford to pay like a full-time admin staff here. So then we looked abroad. Finally hooked up with a really good offshore client in the company in the Philippines to run all of our administration. So then they started tackling a lot more of the comms with clients back and forth. So, and then from there, it's just like, all right, with staffing, how do we need to, like from the client experience, from when someone first inquires to us to when they're training with us, their journey, how do we need to strip that back? So then we looked at, all right, what do we want our first point of contact to look like with a potential lead when they come in? How do we convert them? How do we kind of nurture them through the first 12 weeks and ongoing? So yeah.
So CRM, obviously, for those that don't know what that is customer relationship management, right? And so in the fitness industry, I'm sure you've got different CRM softwares to what I've got as a podiatrist, for instance, right? That's pretty expensive for a lot of people to get at the beginning. Was it expensive for you, the CRM software that you were using? And is there any other way that people might go about even being leaner about starting up?
It's just whatever emails or messages you're sending out frequently, create a draft and make it as simple as possible to put in clients' names and communicate effectively. So, that it kind of ties back into what we're talking about with relationships and communication, where like communication is everything. And I'm a complete fucking oversharer. So if someone comes in and they're unsure about something, I will write it down, try and fix that problem in the future, and then email people, message people, call people, just so it's completely overshared so they know exactly what's going on. So for someone who, can't afford to a CRM and all these other things in the background that do cost money, is just making templates of things can save you so much time. And it's not to take away, and I had this weird insecurity about it as well initially, because I was like, oh, it's not personable, it's not who I am, which is true. But for repeatable tasks, it just makes it so much freaking easier.
Do you find that, because you're training, like you said earlier, you're training CEOs, you're training high-level people that are coming to your gym. You got 140 members that are now, very, very niche in terms of the type of people that you're getting in coming through your line of work. They're the type of people that most likely are also aware of how things operate on the back end of a business. Do you find that having multiple touch points is absolutely vital for these people? And do you ever find that you maybe go a little bit over the top with some of that stuff too? Because I know for me, for instance, one of the things I'm battling with is like simply sending an automated birthday message.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, they got to know it's automated.
Yeah.
But it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I sit on that even yet. How do you find that?
Yeah, well, you're spot on, because like it ties into the issue of oversharing. Sometimes you can piss people off whose inboxes are full with 100 emails per day. So it's just you got to really toe the line a little bit. But for your mundane tasks, you can kind of make it repetitive and easy. But for things that are personable, especially for us, it's, messaging people on their birthday or after their birthday if they've had their birthday on the weekend. That's still done by us. If it's communications about people's programs, or exercise prescriptions that they need help with, that's all done by us. So the things that are really kind of low hanging fruit that people care about, that they want to come in and see us. They want to be looked after by a professional. They want to be making sure that their program's tailored to them. They want to make sure they're having fun and they're safe and they're actually in an environment that care about them. So all those things we'll wrap in cotton wool and deliver ourselves. But then, like suspending memberships, adjusting payments, all that other crap, you can just replicate, and it's super easy.
That's a great way to do it, in the sense, like, even for myself, just listening to you talk about that, I go, well, okay, if I can make as much of the personal stuff come from me,
yeah,
and then go, righto, all the invoicing, all the account worries, like I outsource to a team in Sunshine Coast for my phone calls, and just get them to do the mundane, like very important but basic tasks that just have to be done. If a patient hasn't come back for 6 weeks,
follow them up.
Follow them
exactly.
up. Just doing those type of things is really important, and that keeps the lifeline of a business going up and up for a long period of time. Now that you've been doing in the fitness industry for about 15 years, what have you seen change out there, especially for men, and how they are starting to get back into fitness? Because there's a lot of blokes that, 15 years ago, it was all about being massive.
Yeah.
Now there's this whole idea about the hybrid athlete. And,
I got to run and do 1 million push-ups.
I got to run and do 1 million.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you see as a fitness coach and a professional that you go, these are some of the best skills or traits that you need to develop as an absolute baseline for just health, fitness, and mindset?
We'll start with the training. So it's just kind of, so one of my passions is really helping people move and feel better and getting them out of pain. So it's just really kind of knowing your trainable menu. So that's just, essentially what exercises can you do that make you feel better, that don't aggravate any issues that you've got going on. So a good example might be, it hurts when I bench press. So maybe we'll scrap that for now, but then maybe doing like a cable chest press or push-ups is completely fine. Sweet. So let's crush it. We don't need to bench press. And, as trainers, we've all, a lot of the time we've got all these preconceived ideas about this is the best exercise that you need to do, all this other bullshit. But when it comes down to it, people just want to come in and get a bit sweaty, have some fun, feel better, and make sure they're kind of progressing and doing something. So we don't need to put people in, these people like in rabbit holes of like, these are the exercises you must do. It needs to be completely tailored. So finding the exercises that suit you as an individual in your body. So with deadlifts, it might be feet a little bit wider, or sumos, or whatever it may be, or even fuck off deadlifts, because a lot of people don't need them. So it's just really kind of crafting and kind of listening to your body on what exercises kind of suit you and feel good.
You're now running a business that's successful. You're at 140 members. What's your goal in terms of membership? And, you spoke about coming here and being bankrupt. Do you have any like financial blocks that you currently can't work through that you'd love to work through?
Well, we, so my folks split up when I was 4. And at the time, my mum and dad were running a fish factory. This is in Albany. So then my mum tried to keep business going, but then that fell through. Then my stepdad and mum got together when I was 11, 12. And then when I was 17, their business went bankrupt. So we lost the family the house and everything. So I've definitely tried to build things out to be as protective for myself and my family, because I've been around a lot of financial hardship and a lot of stress that comes from having nothing. But then it's just like, all right, so then for us, it's just making sure we're protecting our house and protecting the business and protecting ourselves. But it is, I've definitely had to be a bit more kind of frugal with things, because inherently I just want to take action and be like, this is a good idea, let's buy this equipment. But it's definitely that's definitely the next kind of step for my development, is being like, I need to look at state of fitness as a separate kind of like an organism to me, because in order for the business to be thrive even more than it is, I need to nurture it more like a CEO than a PT running business. So I need to have my own interests set aside and make sure I'm doing things that better the organization and its staff.
How have you started that off, and what's your biggest barrier to that right now?
Having uncomfortable conversations with people, especially with staff who I am all friends with. One of the guys who works with me, he was a groomsman. Another one who I used to work with works with me as well. And everyone else I would easily have a beer with any day of the week. So it's just trying to, because we all do staff catch-ups each week, but I need to kind of lean into more. All right, when we're doing our staffing catch-ups, I need to kind of organize it a little bit more with like these are our checklists. This is what's gone right this past week. This is what we're working on, and just try and lean into it a little bit more from a managerial sense of developing them, and just trying to put the mate stuff aside, because it's hard. It's a hard total line, but that's more so coming from my own inexperience and insecurity with it.
There was a time in my life where I used to run nightclubs and bars. Right?
Oh.
Yeah, so very different lifestyle. And we used to have a promotional team, right? And that promotional team consisted of 10 or 15 people, okay? And some of those people weren't getting paid a lot of money when they were doing promo. Maybe it's like $90, $100. And one of the things I found was, for me to hold on to that promotional team, which was of value to the nightclub we would work for, I needed to find out, why is it that they're doing this gig and what value does this gig bring to them? And so for some of my staff, let's say hosts, it was they loved the social element of going out and being with a good group of people. And so every time we would do our catch-ups or reviews on how many birthdays did you bring in, or how many people did you bring into the bar, or, look at the guest list that they've got. It would go based off their value. It's like, well, am I connecting you with enough people? Would you like to meet a different group of friends, or whatever it is? Then I had some people that couldn't give a fuck about that. And they just wanted to make the money because they knew that they were struggling with rent. And it was like, okay, if I can, ask you to do X, Y, and Z, can we put a pay structure in place that will allow us to benefit and you to benefit? So you bring in more people, we'll give you a high percentage of the door. You can make rent easier. You're more happy to be here. And it's really interesting because there's a guy called John DeMartini that talks about this a lot. And he uses an example where he was at school with another colleague, I believe it was, or himself, and the teacher wanted him to study or to focus. And he didn't really give a shit about the project. But then the teacher or the person that was helping him sort of brought that project in line with what he valued. And what he valued was chicks. Looking good in front of a girl. Right? 14-year-old boy want to look good in front of a girl. And he's like, well, if you can learn how to talk or to think or to act like this is going to help you with this girl. And it was like, interesting how you can align the values in order to get someone to focus on where they want to go. And as a business owner, that could be something that would be really interesting, is taking stock of staff and going, well, why is it that you're really working here? Besides that, we're mates. And it'd be interesting to see what each one of them says. I don't know. Have you run through anything like that before?
Like we've talked about values, and I guess it's just one of those things we all, and especially like from an organizational sense, like I'm sure there's going to have to be some similarities between the values of the organization and the business and the staff that work for it, including myself. But yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Running a business.
And it's a juggle, because it's like I said, they're all my mates, and I just need to put on a different fucking hat sometimes, and I'm getting better at it. But it's definitely a juggle, especially as we grow. And like I have thought about, maybe at some point we need to get, like a CFO or like a manager in the background to actually help run it like an organization. But we can't. I don't think we can do that until I've got a full grasp of everything.
If fitness was taken away from you tomorrow, right, and they're gone, no, you cannot be a PT anymore. So for some reason, for some bullshit reason, your license got revoked, your business got taken away, and fitness and that goal could not be done for you as a business. What is it that you do?
Systems and processes, 100%. Organizing people.
Yeah.
Organizing organizations, going in, helping structure how we can streamline things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess that sort of ties into what you said earlier, that's your absolute baby.
Yeah. And that it hasn't come organically. It just came out of necessity in COVID when we started, because I knew if I didn't do all the work I needed to, we would have been screwed, especially with a new kid. So, and that's just really, and now we've come on the other side of it, and it's just given me so much time and freedom to focus on the big picture. And then when I need to, I can step actually aside from the business and have time with the family, and I'm completely disconnected from work.
Right. One final thing I wanted to bring up was especially the time that you spend with your family. I just had another young father that came in. He had to work 1 a.m., started really early in the morning, and making sure for him it was going through sobriety, him and his partner could connect better, and that was their thing. Besides, obviously, your work and your partner's work, do you then apply systems and processes to your relationship, and does that keep that together? Is there a way that you operate in that side of things?
It's just having clear time during the week where I'm kind of uninterrupted from work, and I can just devote my time and energy to my kids. And like there's always periods where there's more work going on, or staff are away, or something happens. There's a fuck up that we need to kind of put more attention into. But the majority of the time, when I get home, I can completely shut down from work, and that just gives me a lot of separation. And the loss at the exit of a lot of anxiety around just being overconsumed with work, because it's something I think about nonstop. But with how we've got things set up, when I'm not at work, I can really switch off, and that gives me so much more energy. So when I'm with my family, I can just focus on them.
How do you do that at the beginning?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because I come home, I live with a housemate.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have a partner, and I'll go home and I've had a hard day at work, or something's happened, and it's like I need to physically tell myself before I get out of the car, I'm not bringing this in, right? But it still plays in the back of your head. How did you do it? Because obviously you're very methodical in the way that you go about things. So I'm presuming that there's a methodology behind it.
Yeah, it's just discipline and consistency. Like it was, things starting from, all right, well, when our son was first born, my sleep was shit, so I had to kind of help sort that out. So then I looked at, all right, I can't have my phone in our bed because that's affecting my sleep. That's affecting my relationship with my wife. So when I'm upstairs, no phone, and we're just focusing on whatever we're doing. And then it's just making sure, we live out east. So if there's any other work calls or things I need to wrap up, I can do it on my way home. And then it's just repetition. You've got to give yourself a chance to be successful. And if you just do it a couple of times and you're like, that doesn't work for me, well, that's absolute bullshit, because you just need more reps under your belt of just getting home, shutting down, putting your own shit aside, and just being focused on the people that freaking care for you the most and that you care about. And it's just trying to give them unconditional love and time and attention, and just making sure when you're with them, you just really kind of cherish it and give them the amount of energy they give you.
Dylan, is there anything that we haven't spoken about that you think would be very important to speak about on this podcast? Based off what you know?
Yeah. Good question. Let me have a think about that.
You take your time.
What are your thoughts so far?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think, when we're talking about relationships, I think that's one of the things where you can tell that the way that you work it is systems, processes, methodology, and you can apply that to anything, right? And when you look at your relationships, you're very like, no bullshit.
Yeah.
Now, and that's the way that I see it. You're like, well, no, this is how it's meant to be done. That's what is accepted. You show up in a certain way, you give in a certain way, you love in a certain way. That's important. It's a value of yours now. And it's interesting how you spoke about money as well, in terms of, how that's always been taken away at an early age, and why it's important for you now to set yourself in a specific way so that you don't have the same issues that maybe your parents have had in the past, your mum and your stepdad has had in the past. So I think that's really important and really good. Well, I guess one of the things was around adversity, but we won't go into that specifically, which is perfectly fine. But generally why I ask this question is because sometimes the guest has a piece of knowledge, or the guest has something that they think would be of value to the listeners or to their friends maybe that are listening, that they could share with them, that maybe is a topic of conversation that we haven't discussed.
Well, something that can be quite difficult and something I've had to kind of really battle with is, when I spend all day in a gym and just setting time aside for my own training. And I used to feel quite guilty about this originally, especially when I'd come home and before seeing my family, I would either just come straight home or just go and train. And initially I would always just come straight home, but then I would find I was either unsatisfied or cranky or going, like whatever's going through my head. I just freaking can't get it out. So if I'm ticking my own boxes of eating well, sleeping well, training and doing all those things, like I'm in a much better headspace. I'm a lot more focused, I'm a lot more engaging, and I've got a lot more time and quality time with with work and my friends and family. So making sure I've got my shit together with my own training and food. And then one thing I've been working on lately is actually just having some hobbies outside of work and family, because it can be so consuming. So I've just started learning piano. So it's something where I can just kind of disconnect and just focus on something else.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Piano.
Yeah.
Why piano, man?
I got stupidly long fingers. So
me too.
Yeah. I just, I want to learn something different. And it's just something that I can kind of squeeze in any time. The level of entry, like it's not a huge requirement. Just do 20 minutes a day. Yeah. And it's just right there. It's not like learning a language. No matter how tired I am, I can just kind of really focus on it. So,
I mean, a piano isn't necessarily the quietest instrument
I
to
got
learn
headphones.
in the house.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's like a digital. It's like a digital keyboard with weighted keys.
Okay.
So yeah, it feels like a piano, but it is digital. Yeah.
That's way better. We had a piano at our place. And my sister was learning it, and she was 16 years younger than I was. And I'd come home, I remember, from like university or whatever it was, and she's learning the piano, and I'm fucking racking my brains out. So I was thinking, how is that a hobby that's serving when you go home? But I guess,
and especially because like we've got a long history of mental health and mental issues in our family. Granddad had bipolar, brother's got schizophrenia, a lot of things going on. So I know I can be on a kind of bit of a knife's edge when I'm not looking after my training and everything. So it really does help for me just to, even though I might be taking away time from other people sometimes by my own training, I feel like it just that kind of return investment pays back tenfold.
I'd love to ask one question around that. Obviously, your brother has schizophrenia, and I don't want to talk about your brother, but I want to talk about how you work through that, because sometimes, like for instance, I've got a family member of mine that's going through like depression, for instance, right? Very close. And so then I'm thinking, right, I want to show up as this type of person, but I can't always give them my full energy, right? Because I'm like, then I'm absolutely drained. I'm fucked. And then I need to go out there and work and earn money and keep everything going. So when you're young and you're going through that, did you find that one that was affecting you positively or negatively? And how did you work through that as a brother?
Yeah, we so because I moved to Melbourne when I was 19, and Brad would have been diagnosed when I was 15. And we had a lot of time apart with just hospitalizations and things like that, and just wasn't around in between schooling. So like I was pretty fortunate early days that I was keeping myself so busy, and that was probably just a kind of a bit of a fail safe as well, just to help kind of shield me from whatever was going on. But it just it's just really kind of highlighted how important making sure I'm looking after myself is, because I'm just like our family is just kind of can be on a bit of a knife edge between happy, cheerful, and successful, and then like maybe like a bit of a spiraling depression or just grumpy and a piece of shit. So, yeah, it's just like a lot of the times where, if my wife's like, you're itchy and you're a bit freaking antsy, go for a run, or I'll have a sauna and $1,000,000.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that for me, like if I'm the same, physical activity is my outlet.
Yeah.
Maybe piano might one day be your
Yeah,
outlet.
there you go.
I don't know. Maybe not for me. Last thing I wanted to speak about, mate, and I'm really glad that you've been able to come on. So thank you for taking your time to come on. Is back onto your fitness side. Your members now, you've got a bunch of them, and you're working through helping them all. What's the one common reason why people are coming in to get help in the fitness industry?
We, the more time I spend in the industry, the more I want to do. If we were just focusing on just helping people to come in and do some training and that's it, then that's easier and it's more generic. But we're really, just kind of divert from your question, and we'll get back around to it. We're really focused on long-term systemic habit change, and helping people effectively change who they are outside of the gym. And like 95% of dieters within 1 to 5 years will regain the weight they've put back. Because
Wow.
and one thing they commonly report on is the people that do keep it off, it's just they've had to change their identity. So it's like, all right, what is the identity of someone to keep off their weight? It's eating 3 square meals a day. It's not necessarily snacking, all these types of things. Not necessarily that, and intermittent fasting, and that's that whole conversation for another point that might benefit that person more. But it's effectively just trying to help people evolve and change their identity, which like I've had to go through as well, to be more successful. Because like a lot of the people that come in, they're freaking busting their ass with work, incredibly successful, but they just have no time for training. They're stressed, they're flat out with family commitments as well. So we just try and start off with trying to just help people move, overcome a recurring injury, whatever that may be. And then when people want more, we can give them as much as they need. So then we can talk about, what's some like sustainable nutritional practices we can look at that's individual to that person. What can we do to help get people moving outside of the gym? What can we do to help people manage sleep and stress and things like that a little bit better? Just so over time, we're kind of helping evolve people to make real significant change in their lives.
If people wanted to start their fitness journey with you, and they go, look, I'm ready to have a systemic change, right? What is your business name, and where can they find you?
State of Fitness. So we're located on Chapel Street in South Yarra near the Prand Market.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, Steve, thank you, mate. It's great.
And yeah, I'll put your business in the show notes below.
Yep.
And look forward to hearing how it goes. Oh, here we go.
There we go, baby. At least I didn't do the upshirt.
Thanks, man. Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Well done, mate.